Welcome back, focused learners. Let's jump right into today's explainer, where we're unpacking the 2025 film I Swear. Now, this tracks the incredible story of John Davidson. And you guys, this is absolutely not your standard medical documentary. It's an intense, real look at John's internal and external battles with Tourette Syndrome while trying to survive in a society that's, well, pretty unsympathetic. We're going to explore a totally different way to look at neurodiversity and the human mind. Okay, let's dive right into this roadmap. We're splitting this analysis into two halves. First, how John's mind processes trauma psychologically, and then the actual real-world science of how he physically manages his body. So we'll hit 1, the IFS psychological framework, 2, the internal pieces, 3, reconnecting with the core, 4, technological breakthroughs, and finally 5, lifestyle and therapy. So starting off with Section 1, the IFS psychological framework, specifically focusing on the internal family systems model. This is where the deep psychological breakdown of the film begins. To really get what's going on in John's head, the documentary uses this fascinating psychological lens, the internal family systems model, or IFS for short. Think of it like a giant complex family living right inside your head. Under the IFS framework, your mind isn't just one single unified thing. Instead, it's viewed as an ecosystem of distinct parts or characters. And every single one of these characters has its own job, its own memories, and its own unique way of handling trauma. By using this family metaphor, we can clearly see that John's mind isn't broken. It's a dynamic system of emotional parts working overtime to help him survive his daily reality. Moving right along to Section 2, the internal pieces. Specifically, the exiles, managers, and firefighters. What's really interesting about this framework is how it categorizes his pain. According to IFS, these internal characters fall into 3 main camps. First up, we have the exiles. In this model, exiles are the parts of us carrying all that deep-seated pain, trauma, and shame. For John, these exiles were literally forged in childhood. Growing up, he faced awful alienation, being called crazy and enduring relentless bullying at school. This created an internal part of him that felt like a total outcast, totally unworthy of love. And the thing is, that pain doesn't just evaporate when you grow up. We see a highly visceral example of this during the 2026 BAFTA Awards. When John has an accidental, very public outburst at this super formal event, boom, his exiles are instantly triggered. The intense shame just rushes back, making him feel that old childhood urge to literally sink into the floor and disappear entirely. So the crucial point here is how the other 2 parts step in to handle that pain. The managers and the firefighters. The managers are the parts desperately trying to keep John safe in a pretty prejudiced world. They're the ones suppressing his tics, forcing him to take deep breaths, and keeping him calm to avoid public humiliation. They also fuel his activism, channeling all that pain into a mission to get validation from society. But what happens when the managers fail, when the system is just completely overwhelmed with stress? That's when the firefighters erupt. In John's case, his Tourette's tics and his involuntary swearing actually act as these firefighters. Yes, Tourette's is now logical, but psychologically, these tics act like an involuntary pressure release valve, bursting out to extinguish the overwhelming tension in his nervous system when his anxiety peaks. Which brings us to Section 3, reconnecting with the core and healing the self. Now we hit the true emotional climax of the whole film. There's this incredibly powerful realization that these involuntary actions are, and I quote, not his true self. See, the ultimate victory in I Swear isn't about John finding some magical medical cure that makes his Tourette's vanish. No way. It's a profound psychological shift. It's the moment John actually connects with what IFS calls the self, that calm, centered, compassionate core of who he is. He realizes his tics and outbursts absolutely do not define his identity. They're just his parts reacting. It's a massive breakthrough. And connecting to the self is exactly what allows John to do some real, deep healing. We see this beautifully played out through his reconciliation with his mother. She had struggled with a pretty quick temper during his tough childhood, which obviously left some scars. But because John is finally operating from his core self, he's able to completely replace that past resentment with profound compassion. He forgives her, and it's just this incredible moment of healing those old wounds. All right, so that covers the psychological side, which is absolutely beautiful. But as we pivot into the second half of our explainer, I really have to ask you this. What practical therapies help John actually balance his nervous system? Psychological acceptance is huge, for sure. But how do you manage the tangible, real-world science of surviving severe Tourette's every single day? Let's look at Section 4, technological breakthroughs, focusing on the fascinating science of neurostimulation. Let's move to the physical side and see how this builds a proactive defense for his body. Enter the MNS wristband, developed in a clinical trial at the University of Nottingham. This thing is a literal game changer. Here's the exact three-step mechanic of how it works. First, the wristband uses median nerve stimulation to send these rhythmic electrical pulses right up his arm to his brain. Second, those pulses actually adjust the specific brain waves tied to motor control. And third, this allows John to proactively inhibit his tics without having to rely on heavy medication. I mean, how cool is that? It's just a brilliant integration of tech aiding neurology. But technology isn't just a magic bullet on its own, which brings us to Section 5, Lifestyle and Therapy, looking at daily habits and behavioral therapy. To really thrive, John had to completely overhaul his daily habits from the ground up. Take his diet, for instance. He goes completely zero caffeine. No coffee, no tea, no sodas, because stimulants massively spike the intensity of his tics. He also sticks to incredibly clean eating, cutting out artificial colors and preservatives to keep his brain's processing load as low as possible. And on the therapy side, even with his low ability to suppress tics under stress, he utilizes CBIT, or Comprehensive Behavioral Intervention for Tics. This trains him to recognize that really uncomfortable premonitory urge right before a tic happens and swap it out for much less noticeable behavior. Combined with dedicated stress management, this regimen drastically cuts down his neural overload. And it brilliantly illustrates how John takes his own personal therapy and transforms it into massive community action. He's always out doing outdoor physical activities. He organizes these amazing Tourette summer camps for kids to safely burn off energy, and he's relentlessly educating society. By fighting for public acceptance, he's actually treating himself. Think about it. When the people around him understand his condition, his anxiety drops, his internal fight-or-fighters aren't triggered nearly as often, and his symptoms actually decrease. It's a brilliant cycle. So you take all of that, the deep inner psychological healing, the adoption of cutting-edge wristband tech, and his strict external lifestyle management, and it culminates in something truly extraordinary. John's impactful activism led to him being recognized at the highest level, with an MBE from the late Queen Elizabeth II. He didn't just figure out how to survive Tourette Syndrome, he became an absolute champion for everyone living with it. So what does this all mean for us? As we wrap up today's deep dive, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought to ponder. We've seen the incredible lengths John goes to, from deep psychological reframing to rhythmic electrical wristbands, just to navigate the world. Ask yourself, how can we change our perspective to create a more empathetic society for neurodivergent individuals? Because at the end of the day, our empathy, our willingness to understand rather than judge, might just be the most powerful societal therapy of all. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.